Thanks, Megan, and thank you, Rabbi, for being here. My first question is, how is this current conflict different than previous conflicts we've seen in the Holy Land before?
So first of all, thank you so much, Isabel, for the chance to be here and be with you in this exciting opportunity to be part of the Pulse. It's a privilege and honor to be here. And before I get into any the specifics of your question, which I appreciate, I just want to offer that as great as it is for us to have this opportunity to have a conversation today, my thoughts are also very much with all the people in Israel, in Gaza, who are suffering so much right now, all the loss of life that we've already seen and that we continue to see. So I just want to extend my prayers to them before we answer. What happened on October 7th was unique in the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So let me just give a little bit of background. From the time of Israel's inception, well, actually the UN decision in 1947 to create two states, in Israel and a Palestine, and then Israel's war for independence that ensued, there's been conflict between Israelis and Palestinians about a variety of issues. As wars were fought, the circumstances changed going into 1967 when Israel captured territory that included the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, as well as other territories. Prior to 1967, the Gaza Strip was part of Egypt. The West Bank was part of Jordanian control, so Israel didn't control those. After 1967, Israel came into control of those areas, and the status and the relationship between Israelis and Palestinians changed even further because of that. In 2005, as part of the Oslo Peace Accords, Israel agreed to unilaterally pull out of Gaza. So Israel had some soldiers there, it had settlers there, and 8,500 Israelis were forced by Israel to leave Gaza, making Gaza a territory that would be completely under Palestinian control. Unfortunately, the Palestinians held elections the next year and voted in Hamas into the Legislative Council instead of Fatah, which had been the ruling party. Fatah is committed to a two-state solution. Hamas is committed to Israel's destruction. It's in its founding documents. They continue to assert their desire to wipe out Israel off the map. Made it pretty much impossible for Israel to have a relationship with Hamas because they're predicated on destroying Israel. So Israel imposed a blockade to try to limit the weapons and other equipment that Hamas could import, which also had a dramatic impact on Palestinian lives in Gaza because they weren't able to get access to as many supplies as they need for a peaceful coexistence, which became impossible. First coming out in 2006, then in 2008, something called Operation Cast Lead, in which Hamas had kidnapped an Israeli soldier and hostilities broke out. Basically, in each of these next iterations, in 2008, 2014, and 2021, Hamas does something, Israel responds, rockets are launched back and forth, not so many Israeli casualties because Israel has a good missile defense system. Far too many Palestinian civilians get killed, and then kind of status quo resumes. It's sort of a deterrence effort by both sides. And I think Israelis had come to expect that was sort of the status quo for the near term, that Hamas would do some provocation, Israel would respond, things would quiet down. On October 7th, the entire status of that relationship and Israel's understanding of its relationship with Hamas changed dramatically. We saw on October 7th the loss of more Jewish lives in one day than any day since the Holocaust. Over 1,200 Israelis were killed, and not just killed, but, and I hope this is okay with your viewers, savagely butchered. I mean, we saw there was instances of beheadings. They would come into an elderly woman's home and force her to turn on her Facebook page and do a Facebook Live video to her family of them killing her. This is the kind of savagery and brutality that went on. And in addition to killing 1,200 civilians, and this is not a fight against soldiers. These were people at a music festival. These were people, peace lovers on a communal farm, things of that nature. In addition, 220 plus Israelis and non-Israelis, there's quite a few citizens of Thailand and elsewhere, were kidnapped by Hamas and remain in captivity in Gaza right now. Israel realized at that moment that they could no longer coexist with Hamas being just a few miles away from where they were, and with Hamas committed to destroying Israel and indiscriminately killing Israeli civilians, that Israel had to take action now once and for all to eliminate Hamas to the extent it's able. So this is a fundamental difference from anything we've seen before.
Right.
I believe that the intensity of the news is one of the differences, because this is a conflict which is not new. And during the last decades, not just Muslims and Jews, but also Christians and the others are very worried about what's going on there, about the loss of innocent lives and injustices that are happening in different ways, in different situations. One of the things that it's happening now is of course, the number of people affected live in front of cameras, and as people, as Muslims or as Americans who live far away geographically, we are very connected, considering the amount of news and the way how we are being informed about that horrible situation. And considering this, I believe that a lot of people are deeply affected. First, those who are related as the part of belief, let's say for Muslims and Christians and Jews, who have people there and have that connection, a spiritual connection, religious connection. For Muslims, this is Quds, Jerusalem, is the third most sacred place, and the same is for Christians, and the same is for Jews. So first, as religious people, but also as human beings, I am seeing a lot of people, not just Muslims and the Jews, but a lot of people who are watching the news, who want this to end as soon as possible, who don't want to see affected lives, and of course want a lasting peace, not just for some days, but they want to see peace coming there and staying there forever.
So it seems that things have been complicated, more complicated than in the history that we've seen so far. But Israelis and Palestinians have come close to achieving peace before. But kind of given what you've just explained and given what's happened in the past month of the ongoing situation, do you think it's still possible to achieve peace?
I do. I pray that it is, but it's not going to be as easy as we think or we hope. I know it's sort of our knee-jerk Western reaction to say let's just get to a ceasefire and let's get to peace and understanding and love. But that's not really how things work in the Middle East so much. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a different mindset, a different mentality, and sometimes the only way to get to peace, sadly, is through some war, through some aggression, through showing of strength that gets the other side to back down. One classic example is Egypt and Israel were bitter enemies from the time Israel was created. Egypt led most of the wars in 48, 56, 67, and then 1973. After Israel defeated Egypt in 1973, Egypt's president said, enough. We don't need to keep doing this cycle of fighting and of wars. And he made the courageous decision to seek a peace agreement with Israel. It was the first peace agreement Israel made. It's endured. He unfortunately also paid the price of his life with that because he was assassinated by his people for making peace. But it was only because Israel had been able to defeat Egypt time and time again, and he saw that it was just not productive to keep doing that they were able to get to a posture of being able to work out a peace agreement. We've come close before. The Oslo Accords famously in the early 1990s, that ended around 1993, set a pathway for a peaceful two-state solution. Now, depending on who you talk to, diplomats and negotiators on both sides might have some differences of opinion about what exactly happened because it was behind closed doors. From everything I've read and understood, Israel was committed to getting to a peace agreement. Yasser Arafat, who was the head of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was close to accepting the terms and then at the last minute backed out. And had he not backed out, there would be a state of Palestine in the West Bank and Gaza today. President Clinton, who was the chief American intermediary for the Oslo Accords, regrets what Arafat did as the worst thing that ever happened to him during his presidency. So we're that close to making it happen. The problem was that after that peace agreement fell apart, Israel then experienced a barrage of terrorism from Palestinians, known as the Second Intifada, which led many Israelis to not believe that they had partners for peace with Palestinians. There was a second effort that was attempted in 2008 between the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and the Palestinian President Abbas. That also got almost all the way to completion. The offer by Olmert included even more than at Oslo, roughly 97, 98, 99% of the territory that is in dispute, including access to Jerusalem. And again, we were almost at the finish line, and the last minute, Abbas said no. I think there's three things that we need to get to a peaceful resolution today. The first is that the Palestinians need to elect a new president. Abbas has been in power for over a decade without any elections because he's afraid if they call an election, he'll lose. The Palestinian people need political representation that actually comes from their own ranks, from people they choose to support, and who will then have the cachet to be able to deliver on a peace agreement because that leadership will then represent what the people want. So first thing is they need new leadership. The second thing I'd say is we need the involvement of more of the regional Arab and Muslim states, especially Saudi Arabia. If an agreement between Israelis and Palestinians is packaged along with peace agreements and normalization agreements with some of the other major Arab and Muslim countries in the region, that will both leave Israel a bit more reassured of its status, so we can bring in Arab countries to serve as peacekeepers and security forces to neutralize any threat of violence ensuing. And then the third piece I would say is we need to develop a sense of civil society that embraces an understanding of difference and tolerance and respect for one another's cultures. Both Israelis and Palestinians do too much teaching to themselves of why they should not trust or even hate the other. This starts in schools, in elementary schools. We have to teach understanding of the legitimacy of each other's backgrounds and perspectives and histories, and not start demonizing from an early age if we want to build the next generation, the generation after that, that's going to support peace initiatives.
Any collective punishment, not just according to faiths, but according to all types of laws, is not something to embrace. So absolutely, I believe that peace is possible, and but I also know that peace is harder than war. War is easy when you compare it with peace. So we need a lot of peace pioneers. We need a lot of strong leaders who would aim peace and would work for it.
One of the tragic pieces of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is that for centuries, Jews and Muslims often were able to live in coexistence much more peaceably than they do now. We normally think of us being more progressive and understanding one another in modern eras than in previous ones, but that's actually not true when it comes to Jewish-Muslim relations. There's so much in common culturally, religiously. We both believe in Abraham as the sort of the father of both of our religious traditions. The Muslims see the sacrality of the Hebrew Bible as part of their tradition, and Jewish prophets as part of their system of prophets. there's so much that's similar in terms of senses of religious duty and obligation, of the centrality of prayer, that it is tragic that we have gotten to this point instead of focusing on what brings us together. So much of Judaism teaches about the imperative of seeking out peace and pursuing peace. We believe from the very beginning of the book of Genesis that each individual, Jewish or non-Jewish, is created b'tselem Elohim, in the divine image, with a spark of holy divinity inside each and every one of us that's indistinguishable from one another, and that calls on us to seek out peace and understanding and love of others. So the textual sources are there. We just have to live up to our traditions and our heritage to realize it, and let go of some of the xenophobia and some of the demonization that creeps in, and perhaps go back to our sources a little bit more robustly.
Yeah, well, hopefully that can be achieved eventually, hopefully soon.
Even the question, are there any common grounds, merits an answer to surprise you, because our commonalities are more than our differences. We are religions rooted in the Abrahamic tradition. We are called Abrahamic faiths. For us as Muslims, you are not a Muslim if you don't believe in Jesus, Moses, and the chain of prophethood till the first one, till Adam, peace be upon him. So all this chain of prophethood for Muslims is nothing else but a group of people, of prophets, who came with the same values, with the same goal, to unite people and the belief in God, to make them better people, better parents, better students, better humans, to bring them closer to each other. Having this question related to nowadays, I believe it's a very important question. And unfortunately, people tend to focus more on differences.
Mm-hmm.
People tend to focus more on political debates, and unfortunately, to the recent tragedy, I would call it catastrophe, human tragedy. And the answer to this will determine the way how we see each other. So having this question from you, Isabella, as a student, as part of Sacred Heart University, it's also a message for everyone that religions are here to bring us together, not to tear us apart. Even though there are times throughout history, and we are witnessing one of them,
Mm-hmm.
that from the first picture, you might think it's about religions, but we strongly believe that this is not about religion. It's about other interests. It's about, unfortunately, about other plans, other geostrategically issues, which, as chaplain, I would like to be more focused on the values that we should have with each other. One of the biggest things we have in common is the value of human being. Saving a life is equally with saving the entire humanity. This is a messages that we have in Quran and the previous books. Loving your neighbor, loving the other for the sake of God, knowing and never forgetting that we are all different, even brothers and sisters from the same father and mother are not equal. We have a common prophet, Abraham, who we call him also friend of God. So having this goal in our lives to be as a friend of God, and knowing that passes through being a friend of each other, and knowing the value of an innocent life, I think would be a very strong common ground to keep us together in daily life. And these types of conflict will never end till the last day of life in this earth, and the change will be people like what Sacred Heart aims, people with a Sacred Heart who would show the patience, who would show the level of a belief, of a sanctity, which will keep the commonalities, will keep the common values, will keep the peace and harmony that we have here, despite our differences and despite any other problem that happens in any place of the world. This will also be one of the biggest gifts to our kids, to our future generations, and is also leaving them a path how to deal with any type of conflict. Otherwise, every 20 years, every 30 years, we would have to start from scratch. We had this after 9/11. We had that after elections with this extremely polarized American society. We see that on social media, how people debate on comments with each other. But as people of faith, I think we should be like candles of light, sometimes in the midst of darkness.
But my next question is kind of about how the conflict in the Middle East is affecting people here in the States. We've seen an increase in Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, especially on college campuses. We've been fortunate to not have any incidents here at Sacred Heart, but how would you counsel Jewish and Muslim students here who are troubled by what they've been seeing?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. We have unfortunately seen not just a rise, but really an explosion in, I can speak more to the anti-Semitism. Since October 7th, the number of incidents of hate, whether it's spoken or written or physical violence, has been just horrifying to listen to read about, to see. I happened to go to Columbia as an undergrad, and watching the inability of people to feel safe on a college campus like Columbia in their Jewish or Muslim, background, what they wear, how they act is just sickening to me. That students should ever not feel able to express who and what they are, just walking down the center of campus. Mm-hmm. From the permissibility that people feel to say and post things online on their social media feeds, without any thought to how they come across to others, and then that kind of radicalized othering of and demonization of those who don't fit into your group, right, then starts to surface in physical acts and in hateful rhetoric. Look, I think free speech is important, and it's important for students on college campuses to be exposed to ideas that are different from theirs. But it's imperative that the administrators of the schools and the deans of the schools and colleges and universities make sure that that's done in a way that doesn't jeopardize people's ability to feel safe on campus. Mm-hmm. Like you can express an opinion, and you can also not do it by demonizing another group. You can articulate what you stand for and still be able to come together and share a meal together. Right. So a lot more, I think, needs to be done proactively to establish cultures of civility and tolerance and understanding.
I would say that it's a difference between not being sensitive or not caring at all about this issue, about the injustices that are happening, and bringing that conflict to our house here in the United States of America. I think that we should be educated. We should educate ourselves, knowing more about each other, knowing more about this conflict. It's interesting to say this for university students, but just because we are university students or staff doesn't mean that we are educated about the specific conflict. So educating ourselves and knowing more about the other, knowing more about the differences, as you mentioned, and also commonalities that we have, would be a good start to build that atmosphere that even in a debate, even when we disagree with each other, to continue our relationships that we have. Because I believe that peace within us, not just within Muslims and Jews and Christians, but peace within all students of Sacred Heart, all all citizens of the United States of America, is sacred as is any other issue at any other land. So while we work for whatever we think is right, for me as a Muslim, something is right. For you as a Christian, something else is right. For a Jew, something else is right. Uh, so while we have all these differences and all these sacred things according to us, is not forgetting the common sacredness of our togetherness.
Again, I'll frame this from the Jewish perspective. What a lot of Jewish students on colleges and universities felt initially after October 7th was a reluctance by administrators to speak out and condemn what Hamas did. And absolutely, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is incredibly fraught and difficult, and there are legitimate narratives from a variety of perspectives, but you don't have to compromise any of that to call out murder. Murder is wrong, it's abhorrent, it should never be tolerated, and anyone with a moral conscience should be able to condemn that and also talk to the complexity of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And so I think a lot of Jewish students didn't feel that support. Not at Sacred Heart, I'm speaking about more broadly, at Cornell, at Harvard, Penn, Columbia, and others, didn't feel that support. And I think that absence of statements by university officials also created an atmosphere where it became a little bit more acceptable to be extreme in one's positions.
Now, the people have this alternative of learning about issues, not just from the classic media. For some, is a good thing, but as a chaplain, I can see how many traumas are happening, how many people are affected, deeply affected by the videos, by the images, by the stories, and for some, it's affecting even their daily life, their work, their jobs, and that's why actually it would be nice to have kind of a balance in the way how we are informed. Well, as a clergy member, as a chaplain, as an imam, because I'm not here speaking as a diplomat, my prayers, and I believe all my colleagues' prayers, are to see peace everywhere, not just there, but there are a lot of countries who are being affected. And of course, as people who believe in God and His infinite mercy, I would like to believe, and I believe, that peace is always possible. Even though I also know, I am also realistic, that this is not just between Jews and Palestinians, but there are a lot of actors, a lot of powers who are part of this equation. So my prayer is to see kids smiling again, to see families having a normal life as everyone. No one have to pay the bill of someone else. Even if the other is making an injustice, we believe that crime as individual.
Yeah, and I think, look, I think at Sacred Heart we've done a great job here of making sure that we have these kinds of conversations where whether it's student groups coming together or myself and some of the other chaplains having these conversations. I think having public demonstrations, we had a vigil for Israel, we've had a peace walk. So I think it's important to find ways to bring students together as opposed to permit divisiveness. I think is an important first step. And I hope that Jewish students can be supportive of Muslim students, and Muslim students can be supportive of Jewish students. No one should be the victim of Islamophobia or anti-Semitism or other hate, and we should have a sense on campus of being united and being together in this partnership of community and support one another.
Exactly. Very well said. Well, thank you for being here today, and back to you.